Welcome to a new edition of the podcast, everyone. I am Jon Wilner, along with co-host John Canzano, joncanzano.com, and I am at wilnerhotline.com. And it is 2 weeks and 2 days, I believe, until this first full regular season begins. And we've got predictions coming up. First full Saturday, I should say. We got predictions coming up. Before we get into that, what have you been up? Have you been plowing through all of your research material, or?
Yeah, I've been doing that, but also I've been holding on to the summer a little bit, Wilner.
Good
I don't
for
know
you.
if you're doing this, but we took a little family 2-3 day getaway.
Excellent.
And the three daughters are all still out of school right now. I don't know if your kids are back in school yet, but we have a little bit of time before they go back officially. And we just decided to get away. And it was nice to have all three of them in captivity, so to speak, together,
Yes.
playing games, eating meals, doing things together. And it was kind of cool to see that. I don't know. You're going through a little bit of that. I mean, you have a kid who's about to go off to college. Do you have a middle schooler or two high schoolers?
I got a middle schooler, and my daughter is about to be a senior in high school. So the clock is ticking on her departure from home. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. How is that feeling over there? Because that first when it goes away, because we have one in college, that's a little bit, that's jarring.
Yeah. I'm sure every once in a while I think, should I just beg her to go to school around here and live at home?
Right.
That'd be nice for me. I'm not sure it'd be great for her. But yeah, it's going to be, interesting next 9 to 10, 12 months. The concept of how the days are slow and the years are fast has always fascinated me. And I am expecting this next year to just fly by. And then all of a sudden she's off to somewhere.
Yeah. But, somebody told me this, and it helped me during that transition time, because I think as you drop your kid off to college that first time, you're looking in the rear view mirror, and you're looking back at their childhood, and you're staring at their empty seat at the dinner table that they normally would sit in she has sat in for all those years. And I noticed at drop off at the dorms, my kid wasn't sad. She was excited, and it hit me like she's looking forward. I'm looking back. Like I need to start looking forward and just be kind of happy for what's happening to her. But I'll tell you, it makes the times when she's back during vacations or weekends where she comes home, it makes it precious, and you appreciate it, I think, in a way that maybe you didn't before. And I know we have three daughters, so the two younger daughters are just like over the moon when they hear their sisters pulling into the driveway and the garage doors opening, and it's like they go running out and it hugs everywhere. So yeah, we're holding on to that a little bit. And
it's interesting. August is tough, right? Like I feel like, all right, is this the day where I start working every day for the next 4 months, or can I delay that till tomorrow, or maybe next week? But at some point it is going to come, and that's, you can't breathe for 4 months because of the season. And I just kind of keep hoping that takes a long time to get to that point, but it's coming soon.
Yeah. And look, realignment caused one season to become like three. Yeah, there was no break for fans and for administrators and media members covering it. And all of a sudden we weren't talking about the stuff that was the real diversion, which is the actual football, right? That gets us away. And, sports is supposed to be the diversion. It's not supposed to be like, the IRS and taxes and death and the economy and an election. It's supposed to be fun. So damn it, let's continue to make it fun.
Yes. And it was interesting too, because this summer was kind of slow and I got some downtime, and I had forgotten about that. Oh yeah, the summer is supposed to be for downtime, because the previous 2 summers, previous 3, really no downtime. It was just 12, 365 days a year. We were going nonstop. So it was nice to have a little bit of a recharge time. And now we got it coming up here. We got next week is week 0. Few games on next Saturday, and then basically 2 weeks from today is the first Thursday of the regular season. We got to get to our predictions here.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with Arizona. If we're going to make over/under predictions, that number's sitting at 7.5 wins. Where do you see Arizona, Brett Brennan's first season?
I like them for the over, barely. I think it'll be interesting just how they adjust to being the kind of the hunted, right? They have got expectations that program hasn't had in a long time, and that can change your dynamic. But I will take Arizona over 7.5. Not completely confident, but I'll go over.
Yeah, and I think this number opened a little lower when, months and months ago, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of wagering that's pushed it up to 7.5. I'm with you. I think the number's about right. I think Brennan is going to be a breath of fresh air. I think they're going to be competitive right away. I like the retention that they have. I also think I'm banking a little bit that the Big 12 competition is not going to be as fierce as what the Pac-12 was. And I think you're going to see that throughout my predictions here as we talk about some of the four corner schools in the Big 12. But I'll take the over, but I don't love that bet. I think they're a 7 or 8 win team. I think Vegas has that one about right.
Yep. Okay.
Let's pivot to ASU. Kenny Dillingham. Boy, he had a tight end playing quarterback last year. He had all kinds of problems. Over under 4.5. I'll go first on this one. I love the enthusiasm. I think so much went wrong for them last year. They're in the Big 12, which I think is an easier conference. I'll go over here, Wilner. I think that this is a program that will be talking about being bowl eligible. I don't know if they'll get there, but they'll be talking about it as the last few weeks of the season comes along.
All right. Well, we disagree here. I've got the under. I think their schedule is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They have a tough non-conference game with Mississippi State, and they play all of the good teams in the Big 12, right? They're playing Arizona and Kansas State and Utah and Oklahoma State. All those teams are ranked. Yeah. ASU's got them all. So I think that they'll be better on the field, but I don't know that their record is going to be much improved. I think 3-9 feels about right to me.
I love the team building that he's been doing. Yeah. I love the way they competed last year, even though they were in over their heads in a bunch of games. They just played everybody tough into the wire, but we'll see what happens there. Let's move to Cal and Justin Wilcox. 6.5 over under.
I am going to go under. Everything about Cal is 6 and 6-ish to me.
Right.
And I don't know how Stanford, same thing. How are they going to adjust to this ACC deal? I'm just not confident. They got the quarterback. Their tailback's really good, but I'm going to just go 6 and 6. So I'll take the under.
Yeah, and I'll go under as well. I think they have 6 wins written on all over them, and they have a weird game with Oregon State that I think is a big one that Oregon State's probably going to circle on their schedule. Yes. We'll get to the Beavers later, but that is a game that could be a pivotal one for this conversation. Are they a 6-win team? Are they a 7-win team? I think they'll be sniffing around 6 or 7. Don't love this. Like if you're a better, I don't feel great about saying under because I think it's going to be about 6. Moving on to Colorado. I want to play a little clip here before we get into Colorado. This kind of stole the news cycle last week.
That's the end of that question, I guess. Next guy.
Eric Christensen with CBS Sports Colorado.
CBS,
Tyler,
I'm not doing nothing with CBS. Next question.
Joe Rigo, Mile High
Ain't got nothing to
Sports
do
Radio.
with you. It's above that. Ain't got nothing to do with you. I got love for you. I appreciate you, respect you. Ain't got nothing to do with you. They know what they did.
I'm here in Denver, not national.
You are who you are. CBS is CBS.
All right.
Joe
Ain't got
Rigo,
nothing
Mile High
to do with
Sports.
you. I respect you. That's why I told you that. I'm looking you in the eye as a man. I respect you. I got love for you. But what they did was foul.
What they did was foul. You tell me. Is this a distraction or is it just Colorado will be used to it? And by the way, the over-under is 5.5. Where do you see him?
Oh, by the way, yeah, he is something else. I love and respect you, but I'm not talking to you.
Right.
I'm going to look you in the eye, but I got these shades on. I'm inside. It's Dion, right? That kind of stuff is going to happen, and I think it's not a distraction unless they start losing this year. And then it's a lot, the talent tolerance deal, right? If he doesn't get it turned around this year, these kind of shenanigans, I think are going to take on a little bit of a different tint for everybody, including the institution.
I think it's already headed that way, but Rick George, the AD, he was in trouble himself, I think a little bit, and he needed to make a hire that was going to be splashy. You look at They've sold out now their season tickets in back-to-back seasons before August. Yep. That had never happened. That, in 27 years, they hadn't had a sold-out season ticket base. And now they've done it before August in back-to-back years. The gift giving is up. The people in sponsorships are saying life has never been easier. Their phone is ringing. They're taking orders. But at some point, the bill comes due. And you're right. Like, I look at 5.5, and this kind of feels like the bill. It's coming to the table. And will Colorado be able to handle? Can they get to bowl eligibility? I don't see it. I think their season's going to have a much different start than it did last year. The opener with North Dakota State is not a gimme. That is a program that's going to show up and throw a haymaker and see what Colorado's got. Then you have Nebraska. You have Colorado State. I don't think it's unthinkable, Wilner, that this team could be 0-3 and facing a lot of questions. I do not like the way they responded down the stretch last season to adversity. I'm going to say 5 wins. I'm going to go under, and a lot of drama in the first month.
Well, it's not just the non-conference schedule either. They drew the same rotation, in the Big 12 where you're playing 9 games, but you're missing 6 teams. Who you miss is a big deal. Colorado is playing Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Utah as well. They're playing all the preseason ranked teams in the Big 12. They have a very difficult schedule, tougher than it was last year probably. And I am with you, like 5.5. I think they're right on the money there, but I would take the under.
Right. I'm going under as well. Moving on, Oregon, 10.5. That's a big number, even for a team that, is ranked 3rd and has a lot of talent and a lot of momentum. There's a bunch of excitement in Eugene about, this team. And, Rob Mullins told me in the spring, they had 11,000 new season tickets sold. People are excited to see Ohio State come to Autzen Stadium, but 10.5 means in your regular season, you can lose 1, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like you said, one of those games is Ohio State. I mean, that's boy.
You have 1 to give.
And we should add too that the over-unders don't count the conference championship games. It's just the 12 games on the regular season schedule.
Yeah.
So if you're taking the over, I'm taking the under because I think you have to. I'm counting in. There's going to be 1 upset. They're going to lose 1 game nobody expects, and Ohio State. So, but that's going to be one of the games of the year. It's October 12th. It's in Eugene, but the Buckeyes are going to show up ready to play. I just don't think they have enough margin for error.
Right. And I don't think it matters as much as it used to, right? Because of the expanded playoff, the bar is lower. And I think you can lose a couple of games in this format. 10-2 gets you into the playoff. That's not going to be a bad position to be in if you're Oregon. But I'm going to go with you. I think they have 10-2 written all over them. Like this is a team that, if they beat Ohio State, they're 11-1. If they don't, I think they're 10-2 because I agree with you. I think they're going to lose a game that they shouldn't lose somewhere along the way. And maybe it's at Wisconsin. Maybe it's the Friday night at Purdue. Who knows? Like, I think this is a program under Dan Lanning that we're looking to take steps forward. I still think 10-2 and making the playoff, getting to the semifinal would be a step forward for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. So don't at me if you're a Duck fan who thinks they're going to go undefeated. I'm just being realistic here. I think they're going to draw up a game or 2 this season. But that number 10.5, that's about right. Vegas knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I'll say under with limited confidence because I think they're a 10 or 11 win team.
Yeah. What if that upset is Jonathan Smith and Michigan State, right? That game is Friday night in Eugene. Yeah. I think that's the week before. That's the week before the Ohio State game, I think. So,
and then they go to Michigan. They've got, there's just a Wisconsin on the road. Purdue, it's a weird place to play on a Friday. I think there's a couple of opportunities here for a misstep and some new scenery for these players who have been used to going to Tucson and Tempe. There's going to be some new environments, and I just think they'll drop one they shouldn't. I still think they're in the playoff. I still think they're a semifinal team, but I think 10-2 is the kind of season they'll have. Gotcha. Oregon State 7.5. What do you see there?
I see trouble for the Beavers. Everything about this season makes me think trouble for the Beavers. Mm-hmm. definitely would take the under. I think I would take the under on Oregon State if it was 6.5. And I might take the under on Oregon State if it was 5.5, to be honest.
Now you're being mean. You're just being mean now.
I'm just concerned about everything they got that's new, and this, the Mountain West schedule is not exactly brutal, but boy, they've lost a lot.
Yeah, they've
lost a ton.
I'm with you. I think 7.5 is way too high. I think people are thinking about when that number got said, they were thinking about Jonathan Smith, and they were thinking about Oregon State of old.
Yeah.
That number's inflated. Now, I think they can be bowl eligible, but I was looking hard at their schedule. They go to Boise State at the end of the season. They have to play Washington State, who I think is a little better than them.
Yep.
In that rivalry game. They've got Oregon even though the game's at home, Oregon is loaded. So for Oregon State to get to bowl eligibility, they're going to have to win some games. Like they've got Purdue at home. They have to win that game. They play at Cal. They have to win that game. And so I think they're in a really precarious position. First year head coach, Trent Bray.
Yep.
That always comes with, you don't know what you don't know. There's a game or two in there where I think that will be an issue. I don't love their quarterbacks. I think it'll be Ben Goldbrinson at quarterback. He's steady Eddie, but I'm looking at, him, and I think, okay, I need him to take a big step forward. I need, a kid like Jaden Robinson in the defensive backfield to be just lights out. He needs to become Jaden Grant from 2 years ago. And so I think it's asking a lot. I think, I think they can win at San Diego State. I think they can beat Idaho, of course. I think, they'll get San Jose State, but they've got games against UNLV, Boise State, Air Force. Those are not gimmies. And even though it's a lower schedule, they've lost too much. I think they're 6-6. So I will go under on the 7.5.
Gotcha. Next, we have Stanford way, way down the win total ladder at 3.5. Boy, that's tough. I mean, you're almost going to get 1 or 2 wins. You just kind of stumble into 1 or 2. Yeah. So they're not that far away at that point. What do you think?
I like the over here. I think they can get to 4 or better. And, I'm betting on Troy Taylor as a head coach and the fact that he's got some proof of performance. He has made it happen, at his prior stops. I think, Stanford last year, I watched them. I liked the way they competed, much like Arizona State. They were in over their heads in some games, but they hung around and competed, and I liked that about them. So the ACC, do they get an easier draw there with that schedule than they had in the Pac-12? You tell me, but I'll say 4 or better. So I'll take the over for Stanford.
It is tough. I probably will take the over as well. They got Cal Poly, which is a win. They've got a couple of home games that you'd think, they should win. San Jose State, they're playing on the road. That's probably a win. To me, what sums up Stanford's new existence is that their first ACC game is at Syracuse on a Friday night. Their second ACC game is at Clemson the following Saturday. And in between, they start fall quarter classes.
Yeah.
So they're out to Syracuse, home to start classes, and then back out to Clemson. I don't know. If it were 4.5, I would take the under. But 3.5,
that number's low.
With Cal Poly, San Jose State on there, I'm going to take the over as well. I think they find a way to get it done. But certainly the ceiling for them is 5 wins for sure.
Yeah. UCLA, Deshaun Foster era. Didn't start all that great at Big Ten Media Day, but they'll be judged on what happens on the field. I just don't see it. I think the departure of Chip Kelly, it happened too rapidly. This is not a football program that has had some traction now in the summer and the spring. They've just been trying to piece it back together. I say under. I think they're 3-9 or 4-8, Wilner.
Well, they certainly would be favored for the air mileage tournament in college football, right?
Right.
They open at Hawaii, then they come home and play Indiana, then they go to LSU, come home to play Oregon, then they go to Penn State, right? I mean, that is insane. And they also have to play Rutgers and Nebraska on the road in back-to-back games. Man, new coach. It's going to be hard for them. I think the Big Ten life is going to be really hard for them. And given the non-conference schedule, it's hard. I'm going to go under. I think 4-8's about right. 5-7 tops.
Yeah, I think under on that one, but we shall see. USC 7.5. That is so weird to see that number so low for USC, but bantered about at Big Ten Media Days. Are you an upper echelon program? And here's Lincoln Riley trying to prove they belong. I think they'll surprise here. I think the number is a little muted. I don't think they're a 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 win team, Wilner, but I think they can get to 8. And so I like the over on USC.
8 is that is top end. I would like to find a way to take the under because of their schedule, but I'm kind of with you. There's something about that. Maybe it's a contrarian approach. Yeah, but they do have Notre Dame. They do have LSU. They do, Penn State and Michigan. When you're playing Notre Dame and LSU is 2 or 3 non-conference games, it's tough. Everything tells me under, but I'm going to kind of be contrarian, go over as well. What do we got next? Utah, another big number. 9.5.
Woo. I'm going over. I'm betting on Kyle Whittingham, Utah. I think they are the favorite in that conference. I think, like Oregon, there will be a game in there somewhere that you expect them to win that they don't win, but they are the most consistent, have depth. They've got the quarterback. They've got the coach. They win that conference. They win the Big 12, and I think they can get to 10+ doing it.
There's such a big difference in there between the 10.5 and the 9.5 with the win totals, just because of that margin for error. And Utah does have it. I think they're going to be much healthier. Impossible. It's almost physically impossible for them to have the same number of injuries, right? So if they're healthier, I think that they will do very well in the Big 12. I have got them with the over as well.
Moving on, Washington over under 6.5. Jed Fish's first season. You go first.
I am taking the over after months of thinking, you know what, they're gonna be lucky to get to a bowl game. I think they can get to 7 wins. I don't know that they'll get much higher than that, and that could be 7 wins total. But in Big Ten, they're 4-5. They're under 500. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I will take the over, but I certainly don't love it.
I kind of did the same thing. I originally said really rough year, and then I started looking at the schedule, and I'll be honest with you, I was swayed by the way that Jed Fish talked at Media Day, and I suddenly went, okay, maybe the start of their season is better than expected, but a key game for them in this equation is that Apple Cup game. And I think Washington State and Washington are going to play that game very close. And, I wouldn't be surprised if Washington State wins it. Wouldn't be surprised if Washington wins it. That game is really pivotal to this conversation. But I think the first half of the season for Jed Fish is going to be celebrated. I think they'll end up ranked, and they'll hang around the top 25, the lower end of the top 25 after 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. But then I think there's going to be a big downfall as they get a reality. They have to go to Penn State. It'll be a whiteout game. The end of their season, I think, will be relatively muted and unsuccessful. But I still think they can get to 7. I don't see 8 for this team, but I think they can get to 7. So I guess I'll say over.
Yeah, you're right, though. They can't afford a stumble early if they want to get to 8 wins. No doubt about that. Last one.
Washington State.
7 wins, I should say. Washington State 7.5. So it's the same over-under total as Oregon State. How do you see things for the Cougars? Kind of similar in that they've got a rivalry game early, just like the Beavers do. Different dynamics involved, though, for sure.
They can win their rivalry game. I don't think Oregon State can beat Oregon. And I don't think anybody believes that Oregon State will beat Oregon, even playing at home. And Oregon may be able to name their score in that game. But Washington State's a different case. They have a shot in that Apple Cup, and there's going to be a lot of emotion. I think they can get to 8. I'll say over on Washington State, but they do have to go to Fresno. They have to go to Boise. They drew, like Oregon State, some of the tougher, more difficult, Mountain West Conference games. But I think Washington State's going to be a team that is talked about at the midpoint of the season if they can win the Apple Cup game, because I think it'll suddenly vault them into sort of the national consciousness. It's the America's team thing that Teresa Gold, the commissioner of the Pac-12, talked about last week in last week's episode. But they have so much depth. I love Wayshawn Parker, their true freshman running back. He is dynamite. He is an electric player. They have enough back, and their schedule, frankly, is easier than the Pac-12 schedule that they played. Even though Jake Dickert is saying it's tougher to go to Boise than it is to Stanford, I still think Washington State can get to 8 wins. And
well, boy, if they can be on the radar even into October, it's a successful season for them. And they got to beat Texas Tech. That's the game before the Apple Cup. That would give them some momentum, get more eyeballs on the Apple Cup. And they do have a decent chance to beat the Huskies for sure. So 7.5, boy, it's close. I mean, even if they get to 7, that's a good season for them because they're bowl eligible. I would probably pick the under, but it's close. I certainly like Washington State's chances much more than Oregon State's chances of getting to 7.5, getting 8 wins.
100%. Moving on. Question for the upcoming season. Will Oregon beat Ohio State? We kind of touched on this.
A little bit.
I think Oregon's capable, and they're playing at home, and they've won. They beat Ohio State at Ohio State a few years ago with Mario Cristobal. But I've yet to see Dan Lanning win this kind of game. And that's going to give me pause right here. Could the Oregon beat Ohio State in a playoff game at the end of the year? Different question. So what do you think?
I'm going to pick the Buckeyes. And I haven't actually looked at the point spread. I'm sure there is one somewhere.
Yeah, it's 1.5. It's fluctuated 1.5 this way, 1.5 that way. It's kind of bounced around.
Got bounced. I'm taking the Buckeyes because I do need to see Dan Lanning win a close game like that on the huge stage, kind of before I'm willing to pick them to do it. Those Washington games, every one of them, same thing. 3-point loss after 3-point loss after 3-point loss. And it feels like it's going to be one of those games. And I don't know if they've got it. That there'll be 5 plays in the fourth quarter that will spell the difference in that game. And I kind of like Ohio State to make those 5 plays.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the coaching specifically. I mean, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly against Dan Lanning and his defensive coordinator Tosh LaPoy is right now. That looks like a mismatch. I need to see Oregon play really well in the early part of the season. I need to see Dylan Gabriel look comfortable in Will Stein's offense. Get back to me when, on the week of October 12th, we'll talk about this more. Yeah. But right now I'm calling that one an Ohio State win in a close game. And then Oregon circling, hey, can we get to the playoff or can we get to the Big Ten championship game and get a rematch against these guys? But, it would be a breakthrough for Lanning and his program, and one that is badly, badly needed.
One of the big, most interesting subplots to the season to me is the Chip Kelly factor at Ohio State. He is a fantastic coach of the run game, right? I mean, every one of his teams, everywhere he's been, they can run the ball. And Ohio State has needed that. He will know how to attack Oregon. Yeah. He's kind of the X factor in that game. You're right. That's going to be a big
and you're right to that, because at Big Ten Media Day, everybody was talking about, can Oregon's pass defense improve? Can it be better? And I was like, statistically, Oregon's pass defense took a knock last season because guess who was on the Washington sideline? Michael Penix Jr. and they had the pass attack with Roma Dunze and Michael Penix and all those receivers that I think really put Oregon on its heels in those 2 games.
Yep.
It's the run game that Oregon's going to have to be great in, because that's what Ohio State's going to do. They've got great running backs, and they have Chip Kelly, who is now freed up from NIL and recruiting. All he needs to do is get a napkin out and start game planning.
That's right. What do we got next year?
Moving on. How many wins for Jonathan Smith? He's got Aiden Childs at quarterback. He's got a new team, a new program, selling a lot of the same old at Big Ten Media Day, as he was looking at here's Jonathan Smith selling Michigan State as an underdog like Oregon State at Big Ten Media Day. Do you buy all that?
I do buy it. I think they are an underdog. And in a lot of ways there, it's a similar situation to Oregon State, where they don't have the same amount of resources as Ohio State and Michigan, right? Penn State, even SC and Oregon. So I think it's going to be easy for him to kind of just get caught in the churn of the middle of the pack of the Big Ten. I don't know that they're going to make a bowl game. I think it's going to be a tough first season for him, even though Aiden Childs is a very good quarterback.
He's such a good coach.
He
tended to overachieve at Oregon State, but can they make this season interesting? I've heard people talk about him as a 3-win team or a 4-win team. I think they can do better than that. I think they'll flirt with the idea of bowl eligibility, but I look at what he did at Oregon State. It was a slower build than that. You look at his first year, they were not competitive in games. I'll be curious to see how they can line up against, the middle of the Big Ten conference, because that would be the benchmark for him. And I think if Jonathan Smith had been more patient, I think he would have ended up with a better job, Wilner. He would have ended up at UCLA or Washington. And I think that to me is a big factor.
How many wins for Kalen DeBoer as we continue our tour of
all right, let's do that.
Coaches.
Yeah.
What do we think for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama?
Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I mean, I said, and Alabama fans got mad at me because I said this will be a test of their patience, because I think they're going to lose some games that they are not used to losing in that conference. It's a transition of coaching that they have not had. This is a transition of an era. I think DeBoer will be fine long term, but I think there will be a step or two back, and there will be some people at Alabama who are not comfortable losing a bunch of games, going, hey, wait a minute, 9-3, that's not good enough. But what do you see for his first season?
Here's what I see. I see at Wisconsin, I see Georgia, I see at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma. Yeah. So even if they find a way to win 3 of those 5, that's 2 losses. They'd have to win every other game they play to get to just 10-2. So it is going to be very difficult, I think, for them, and very interesting to see how the fan base responds to anything less than 11-1, for instance. Certainly anything less than 10-2.
Yeah, I think they're 9-3. I said that, and Alabama fans say, well, you don't understand the culture of Alabama, but I just think it's, DeBoer will figure it out eventually, but I just think it's going to be tougher. That transition will be more difficult. And I think the others know, Wilner, that this is the year to get them. They do. Moving on. We're hitting a bunch of topics here. All right. Kyle Whittingham. Is this it? Is this it for Whittingham? You go. You talk to him. You go. You take the lead. I talked to him. I want to play this clip here. I asked him why Utah made this announcement or made it public that they had a contingency plan in place with Morgan Scalley, the defensive coordinator. Here's what Kyle Whittingham said.
Well, first of all, it's not that uncommon for schools in this situation to do. It's been done before, and you got a coach that's nearing retirement, successful program with really good assistant coaches. It just makes sense to, and probably the primary driving factor is for recruiting. Recruits want to know what's going to happen, and I think that laying out a coach in waiting plan really gives stability to the program and lets recruits know that, hey, it's going to, when it does happen, it's going to be a seamless transition, and things will just keep on going. They're not going to, blow the program up and bring in a new coach from the outside and have a whole different regime. So I think from a recruiting aspect, that's where you really, the real benefit for having this plan comes into play.
Look, we went on to talk about kind of some legacy things where I asked him, can you afford to look at what you've built there? And he said, no, not right now. Maybe at the end I can do that. I did leave that interview with a feeling that if Utah had a special season and made the playoff, he mentioned the playoff being kind of the thing they haven't checked the box on to this point, even though it's an expanded playoff. I kind of feel like if Whittingham gets to the playoff, that there could be hey, I've had enough. It's time to turn it over. But what'd you make of the clip there and how that dovetails with that question? Yeah, I think that certainly the recruiting is a big piece of it, right? And he's getting asked by recruits. It's an issue.
because he's 64. He's going to be 65 before the season ends, right? He has done everything except for the playoff. I think you go if I'm Whittingham and you make the playoff, you go out on top. And this is his 20th season. I think this could very well be it. I would put it this way. If we're betting on it, I would bet that this is his last season. I think there's better chance of that than it not being his last year.
Yeah, I think we'll keep an eye on that. And I also think he's got the quarterback. He's got the depth. And it's not getting better unless Cam Rising, middle-aged Cam Rising is coming back for another season, which he is eligible for. But I think this is it. I think this is a great, it on paper lines up nicely. And I don't think he fully steps away. He obviously has got a relationship with the University of Utah, but I think if he goes, I think he still remains kind of visible and present within the athletic department. And I think he's an important part of their future, but this could be the time. Let's pivot to the playoff since we brought it up. Which G5 team is getting to the playoff in your mind?
Well, I think Boise, to me, is the favorite. Mm-hmm. They finished hot last season. They got a lot of guys back. Quarterback is probably going to be Malachi Nelson, the former 5-star recruit at USC. They are loaded, by far the best team in the Mountain West. The only other contender that I see right now for that spot would be Memphis. They have a very good team. And again, there's an automatic bid waiting for the highest ranked team of the group of 5. And that is different. They are guaranteed to have a seat at the table. I'm going to pick Boise, but I could see it being Memphis.
I like the two teams you picked. I think they're in the conversation as candidates, but keep an eye on Colorado State. I thought they showed a little something last year. I like their quarterback. There's a video circulating of, these guys were offered a bunch of NIL money to go to other schools. They decided to stay. They play with a chip on their shoulder. I thought last year we got to see them in that high-profile game against Colorado. I think Memphis and Boise, Colorado State in the conversation for me.
Colorado State's a good call for sure. And they've got Colorado again. This time it's in Fort Collins, so they've got a good chance there.
And it'll get a lot of eyeballs. I mean, and as much as the rankings are supposed to be about the metrics on paper and the teams playing, I think Colorado State's going to get some attention at the early part of the season. Moving on. Where do Washington State and Oregon State? What's their status? Come December, come January. What are we talking about with these Pac-12 teams?
Well, today is an important day, actually. Today was the day that if any ACC teams were going to leave the conference next year, they had to provide notice today. As far as I know, there was no notice provided, which means the ACC is going to probably stay intact at least through 2025. So that's just one of the dynamics involved with the future of Washington State and Oregon State in terms of what their options might be. I think we get done with this season and they are going to have, I kind of hate to say it in some ways because you want to root for them in their situation, but it's going to be tough. And I think we get through the season and there's going to be questions like, all right, more questions about their future at the end of the season than there are right now in terms of viable paths forward. How they do on the CW, the ratings for that will be important. And I know we've talked about that, but it gets down to winning. And they got to show that they can win in order to recruit, in order to be relevant for the other conferences.
Yeah, I think their TV ratings are going to be a big marker of their success of their season. They have to win games and stay relevant and visible. I think Oregon State needs to be bowl eligible, best case scenario, and Washington State needs to be bantered about. But I think this is going to come in two parts. As much as like people want this to be solved and want them to find direction, there's nowhere for them to go right now. And so I think the 2025 season, if I'm reading Teresa Gould's comments right from our interview that we did with her last week, the 2025 season becomes vital to like, what is their plan? And can they forge a scheduling alliance with some Big 12 teams or the Big 12 or some ACC teams in the ACC or some combination there that positions them as, hey, we're playing a Power 4 schedule. We belong in the Power 4, because I think that to them would be making it. Now, can they involve the CW? Can they involve ESPN or Fox or somebody else in carrying those games, that remains to be seen. But, everyone talking about, super conferences, you have been squeezed out to this point if you're Oregon State and Washington State. So they're trying to create a crack in the door, get themselves back in. And it comes with that first piece being, what do you do for 2025? Do you want to still be playing a Mountain West Conference schedule? Nothing against the Mountain West, but you don't if you're Oregon State and Washington State. Then beyond that, I think comes January, comes some serious questions about, hey, do you have to pick a path? Do you have to say we're going to rebuild, or do you have to start to rebuild even if there is no chaos in the ACC to this point, or it's the same kind of ongoing negotiation? So first piece, I think, will be 2025 schedule. And I think at the end of the season, that's what we'll be talking about. Where are they playing in 2025? Who are they playing in 2025? And what network is carrying those games in 2025? And then beyond that, that gives them until the summer of 26 to rebuild and reconstitute or whatever they're going to do.
What is the drop dead date? What do you think? When do they need to have a plan? Would you say? Give me an over-under, since we were talking about that earlier. Over-under drop dead date for just a plan for 2026 and beyond.
2026 and beyond?
Yeah,
no,
their future.
Assuming they don't have a waiver, I think it comes a year before. I think you need to know in June 30th of 2025, I think you need to know what you're doing. And so I think it puts a lot of pressure on the Pac-12 between January 1st and maybe the spring of trying to get themselves in position and sort through those options. And they should know, right? They should know what's happening in the ACC by January or February, or, they should have some indication on whether or not there's going to be enough chaos there, or if it's a straight rebuild. Chaos is their friend. They need friction. They need chaos. They need settlements, and they need willing partners. And right now they don't have that. So it's a scheduling alliance first. Then what do they do second for me? What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the complicating factor is they need a TV deal for whatever league they're going to have.
Yeah.
Either joining the Mountain West, reforming the Pac-12. They have to have the TV deal moving close to concurrently with decision on what conference they're going to be in and whether they're going to try to expand or just join the Mountain West. And those things are complicated. So they have the two most complicated things in college football basically are conference realignment and TV negotiations. They got to do both of them basically together, all of it in time to be somewhere by the fall of 2026.
Moving on. Next question I have for you. Who wins the national title?
Well, there are now 4 rounds of a playoff. So it's opened up for a lot of teams. The question is who can win at least 3, even 4 games in the playoff. And it's going to get those last 2 are going to be really tough. And I think it's going to end up being the same. It'll be fun early, maybe an upset or 2, new blood. And then we're going to get to the point where it's the same old big boys. I've got Georgia winning it. I think that they were awfully close last year. They lost the SEC title game to Alabama in a close game. Georgia could have very well been the best team. So I will pick the Bulldogs. How about you?
You're not dumb. I mean, Georgia's won 47 of their last 49 football games.
Crazy.
Think about that. Think about that run. But I'll go contrarian here. Even though I need to see Oregon beat Ohio State on October 12th, I like Oregon's depth. I like how deep they are. I like the quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. If Oregon finds a way, Wilner, I not only have them in the semifinal game, I think they can get to the national championship game, and I think they might have a shot in that national title game. Phil Knight, 87, 88 years old by the time that game kicks off. Oregon is focused very much on making it happen for Phil Knight, even though he said, hey, it was just a Rose Bowl that I wanted. You don't put $1 billion into a program, into a school to go to a Rose Bowl. So I'll tell you what, I'll make an outlier pick here. I'll say Oregon underachieves in the regular season, but wins the national title. And I'll get called a homer for this. But I just think it's going to be a different kind of season. I think you have some mulligans at some point of the season. And Oregon's depth, and they're not just good, they are deep, Wilner. Yep. And they're acting like they know something the rest of us don't. And so could this be the year? I heard Kirby Smart at SEC Media Day talk about Oregon having, I wish I had Phil Knight's money in my NIL thing. Like, we haven't heard SEC characters say those kinds of things.
That's
so
true.
I will take Oregon to win. And along those lines, can I pick Dylan Gabriel as the Heisman Trophy winner?
Go ahead.
Do it. I mean, if they're winning the national title, Dylan Gabriel's winning the Heisman. So I'll say those two things go together.
All right. I'll take Carson Beck from Georgia. Certainly Oregon, Georgia in the national championship game would be something, right? I mean, landing against his former team, and we all know what happened in the first game of his head coaching career against the Bulldogs. So.
I went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium that day. I plugged in my laptop, took it out of my bag, game kicked off, and it was over. Like, like that. But Georgia, it'll be, I think, Georgia from the SEC. It'll be Ohio State or Oregon from the Big Ten. And I don't think I think you're right. I think we'll get some fun early. Like, you get a Memphis or Boise State in there as a 12 seed. That group of 5 champion is going to be the 12 seed in the playoff. They have a shot against the 5 seed in that opening round game. But beyond that, once you get those top 4 seeds cooking, I think those games will go kind of how they've always gone.
You made a great point too about depth, because let's say Oregon makes the Big Ten title game and loses. They would then be a 5, 6, 7 seed. And to win the national title, they'd have to play 4 playoff, 12 regular season plus Big Ten championship plus 4 playoff, 17 games. You have to have big time depth. And there certainly are not many programs that have that. Oregon does.
Yeah. Well, Oregon, Ohio State. I mean, there's just some programs that are built differently, even though, we know they are. They're built with depth and talent beyond that. Any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, we'll probably wrap it up, and I'll come up with like a whole bunch of predictions a little bit later when I'm walking the dog, and it'll be too late. But no, I think we covered most of it. We didn't go with first coach to be fired, but and I've thought about that one, whether we should address it. We could address it maybe in a few weeks.
We could do our hot seat way too early, but you don't know it, but you're on the hot seat predictions.
Yeah. And we are going to do a episode devoted to questions from our listeners coming up here real soon. Before the season starts, we need to get as many questions addressed as we can here.
Sounds great. All right. I appreciate everyone who subscribes to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a like and subscribe, share it with friends. Read me at johncanzano.com. Read Jon Wilner at wilnerhotline.com. And we're back next week with an all-new episode of Canzano and Wilner, the podcast.